So this really is a nice, unusual set, and I think it's really going to appeal to the imagination of children in particular, but also maybe railway modelers who aren't conventional railway modelers. Hi there to you. It's really great to see you. I hope I find you well. I'm Jennifer Kirk. Welcome back to the channel up here in the loft on Weir Yard. And today it's actually quite an exciting day. I received delivery of some of the Bassett Lowke Steampunk models. Now, if you cast your mind back to January 2020 when the Hornby range was announced, and it was so exciting. So many great models coming through, harking back to various parts of Hornby's history over the full 100 years. It really was so exciting that it might have been easy to miss the Bassett Lowke range. And these are a series of steampunk models that were designed by Laurie Calvert, who you might remember from Team Steampunk on Series 1 of Great Model Railway Challenge. He's also been a regular fixture of the exhibition circuit with layouts including Cato Pass, and Hornby asked him to design an imaginative range of steampunk themed models that could be quite easily put together around some of their railroad range. Now these have finally landed today on the mat, and you can see behind me the pile of three there. So I've got one locomotive, and I've got a wagon and a coach as well, and I'm really excited to see these. It's something that I've thought since the day that I saw them announced, that these are going to be a great addition to the range that gives some great play value to the younger modeler, to give them an outlet for that creative imagination that may be a little bit too constrained by conventional railway modelling. And actually I suppose it's a good sign from these models that I'm already looking at these and planning a steampunk themed railway. I'm also going to have a go at making my own steampunk themed locomotive. Now I've got here a locomotive that would have otherwise long since gone to the scrap heap under the layout, and it's an old Hornby Railroad Class 6 diesel shunter, but this is going to be an ideal basis for a steampunk themed build, and I think that it's something that this range is really bringing to the market, that it gets the creativity flowing. And I wouldn't normally consider kitbashing a locomotive, but getting these in the post just under an hour ago has really fired me up. So come with me, we're going to look at the Bassett Lowke Steampunk range, and then we're going to get creative. And today's video is with the kind support of Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories, and also a big thank you to Hornby and Bassett Lowke for sending these models over for review. These are the three models that Hornby have kindly sent over from the Bassett Lowke Steampunk range. And as you can see, we've got one locomotive, a steampunk coach, and a steampunk wagon. So between all these we get a full train, but there is a full range with, I think it's 3 different locomotives there that you can see on the back. And it's launching with 2 different coaches, 2 vans and 2 open wagons. So there's a wide variety of different bits and pieces to collect. And they've also got a range of paints, and I'm really excited to see the figures when they come through as well, because they've actually been 3D scanned from, I believe, a live action roleplay group that roleplay in a kind of steampunk world. So it all fits together, and I think that this is only going to fire up modelers' imaginations. It's certainly done that for me. The packaging itself is very different from the kind of packaging that I've seen on the Hornby wagons, With these we get a nice picture of the model, and the box itself comes with lots of rivets. Now rivets are great in steampunk. Rivets, goggles, corsets and cups of tea, I think, is what the steampunk world runs on. It doesn't actually say on these boxes which wagons are inside them unless you look very, very closely underneath the barcode. So what we've got here is the Darjeeling crate wagon. Of course, the steampunk world runs on tea, so Darjeeling, it's a region of India, I believe, but also a type of tea is named after that. Inside the box, it's interesting that the pull-out card piece that you see the picture of the wagon through the window on the box does actually have details of what the wagon is, but that is hidden by the end of the box. I'm just going to put that out of the way there. And let's get the wagon out. One of the first things that I've noticed with these wagons is they're actually very, very heavy. The top appears to be a resin cast in the shape of the wagon. Now they are based on wagons and locomotives in the Hornby Railroad range. We did do an interview with Laurie Calvert way back, I think it was in January, and we talked about the creative process of making these. So I believe that what he set out to do was to use elements from Airfix kits, gluing them to various railroad wagons to get that steampunk feel, and that Hornby were then able to create moulds to cast these in resin. And I actually recognise that. That's the funnel cap off, I believe, the Bismarck. So it's quite interesting. It's one of the things that I know that people do with my exhibition model, Grove Street Yard, in the scrapyard on there. They play Hunt the Part from the Airfix Battleship, and I'm finding myself doing a little bit of that as well. But it does give this kind of really out there, steampunky, also elements of things like Thunderbirds, Terrorhawks, those kind of slightly sci-fi TV series where they just let their imaginations run riot. So we've also got metal wheels, and these are incredibly free running. If anything, the wheels on this wagon I've found are more free running than any other wagon. I put this on my layout and it was finding gradients that I didn't even know existed. So in terms of running a train of these, even though they've got a lot of weight with that cast resin top, it's not going to cause undue strain on the locomotives. We've got the standard railroad base with the larger goalpost type couplings there. I suppose it's by virtue of they've used existing mouldings that they've had lying about the range, cheaper mouldings, that's kept the costs down. Yeah, it works. It does really work for me. And for younger hands, these are probably a lot simpler and more robust for handling as well. And actually, it's standing up to handling. One of the things that you find if you glue bits and pieces to models, sometimes the glue is the weak spot, but because these are completely cast in resin, I'm really giving this some stick, and everything, it's just one piece. Even though it looks like it's come from the Airfix kit, it is part of that casting. The actual finish on this is quite nice. There's like a red base colour, I think it's a red oxide, but then it's been almost over dry brushed in the silver to get that metallic sci-fi effect, and actually it does work pretty well for me. Let's have a look at the locomotive next. So let's have a look now. Same packaging. In fact, the packaging is all identical regardless of whether it's a locomotive, coach or wagon. And this is Leander Adderstone's Co-op Commandos engine. And you can see there it's based on the Hornby Railroad 040 chassis, the kind of Smoky Joe type chassis. So let's get this out, and we also get there's some instructions in here as well. And these look to be there we are, Steampunk 040 locomotives, but it's a fairly basic thing here, which actually shows the regular railroad type locomotives. I recognise the Desmond, the Class 6 shunter, and the Holden 101. So it gives you a little bit of detail about taking the body off, some oiling points, and actually what I am going to do is I will take the body off this one at some point. Let's just pull this out. Interesting. They also come with a bit of background. There seems to be a backstory to the whole range, and I really like this. It's a very rounded range. So Adderstone's Co-op Commandos engine, made from old rolling stock on whatever may have been lying about. Never mind the exterior, the true genius of this engine lies within. Every inch unique and engineered to perfection, so she runs like a dream and punches like a pugilist. And if bits on the outside can't hold up to the strains, they can simply be replaced or remoulded. Like the family broom, it's only had 3 new head gaskets and 2 new dead man's handles. So that's quite nice. Actually, was there... Let me just go back and... Was there... Yes, there was. I missed that. So TT and more tea in bulk and on the move. Bassett Lowke had the ingenious idea to put his tea factories on the rails. Why waste time drying and mixing the leaves at the plantations when it can be done just as safely on the move? Well, as safely as highly pressurised boilers, threshing blades and drying ovens can be at speed. Gosh, a bit like the idea behind the mail sorting train, but for tea. I hadn't realised there's a little story behind each of the items printed onto these cards. And they do feel that's like a proper, almost like a postcard type material. That is quite nice. Let's have a look inside. Standard packaging in here. This is the Locomotive. Again, what strikes you initially is the immense weight on this, and you can see that what they've done is they've cast resin the top based on Laurie's original prototypes, but it is quite nicely done, and there are some sticky out bits, for want of a better expression, and they are actually quite robust. So this is going to stand up to being handled by younger hands quite well. And of course the Hornbeat Railroad 040 chassis dates back to about 1980, I think, and it is tried and tested and so reliable. So what is underneath this is a bulletproof locomotive. Again, we've got the big goalpost couplings front and back, and then we've got the body on top, and it's a one-piece resin casting. So what I want to do now, I'm going to bring down my trusty screwdriver set, get the large flat head, and just get underneath there and lever it off. It's not actually screwed on, or even clipped for that matter. It's a push fit with a tiny amount of glue. This is just a little bit of that glue is broken away, but it is an interference fit. So that's given us access to the inside, and you can see there that it is a one-piece moulding, and it's done in this kind of dark black, then dry brushed over in silver to give us this kind of worn, well-used look, which really actually works quite nicely. The silver does bring out a lot of that detail. It is a really detailed model when you consider it's a one-piece resin casting. Inside it's the standard motor there, and actually I'm looking at this space here. There is enough space that I could probably DCC fit this, and I might come and do that at a later point in time. It's quite easy to hardwire these locomotives even though they're not DCC ready. I've done a fair few Hornby locomotives that are not DCC ready, and I've never yet found one that's been too much of a challenge. The rest of the model, there is an element glued on the back there. This looks to have started out as the chassis for, I'm guessing, the Desmond or the Smoky Joe. So it does have elements I remember from that chassis, but it does work ever so well. Now, let's get this top back on. It's an interference fit, even though it was glued to start with. It's not excessively glued. But it goes back on and it does stay on, so I think the glue is a bit belt and braces, and I particularly like the relief detail in the cab there. So this really is a nice unusual set, and I think it's really going to appeal to the imagination of children in particular, but also maybe railway modelers who aren't conventional railway modelers. And if it brings new people into the hobby, then that can only be a good thing. The final item in the range, this is another this is a coach. Let's get that little card out. I'm really interested to see what it says. So this is the new world, a world of mad science, eco-warriors beneath the waves and empiric wars. The three-mast clippers are now too slow to get their precious cargo past the devastating submersibles of those that despise empire, whilst the horse and cart falls constant prey to the tannin-hungry lizards that slip through the time streams. But the tea has to get through, the world demands it. Build an imaginative world of innovative trains as they race the precious cargoes of Bassett Lowke across a perilous steampunk landscape. Who will win the race? And this is the Thermopylae. I think it's the Thermopylae Impulsion tea coach. Yeah, I think is that. It's a Thermopyle or Thermopylae. And there's a back of my mind thing. There was a famous tea clipper ship called the Thermopylae. So I'm wondering if it's named after that. But it's just a steampunk coach. There's the picture of it. Let's get that to one side, and here it is again, another resin casting, and this is based on the old venerable 040 Hornby railroad coach, which has appeared in so many different guises. In fact, I think it's currently in the catalogue as a track cleaning coach as well, in that sort of yellow and black chevron look. But we can see on there a lot of pipe work on the side, bits and pieces. I'm trying to recognise some of these parts. I'm not sure. I have to ask Laurie, actually, which parts these are. I think he did say that an English Electric Lightning Airfix kit may have featured quite heavily. And we do even get clear glazing in there. So it's not a solid one piece. Well, it is a solid piece, single piece, but it's not completely solid. We do get glazing in there. And again, really free running, large couplings again, so really nice coach. So we take them all together and we've got ourselves an instant train. So really pleased to see these. And let's see, 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 others to get. So we've got the I'm going to call it the Thermopylae. I'm going to have to ask Laurie about that. So we've got the Impulsion tea coach and the Darjeeling crate wagon. But there's also a Hatter Milliner wagon, because of course Empire was built on hats as well as tea. Dinosaur hatchery wagon, goggle polisher wagon. Oh yes, goggles for the win. And Difference engine factory coach. And then we've got the Leander Adderstone's Co-op Commandos engine. But you can also get the Fearless Boston Grey's Hatter's engine and Rogue Lady Trefenia Lovelace's Diesel Dame's engine. So there's a whole story to this world. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to move these two. I'm going to move them up there. I'm going to leave them as my inspiration. And what I have is an old Hornby Class 6 diesel shunter. And I am going to, as you can see, it's seen a lot better days, but it does work really well. And that's the beauty of these, is that the motors and drivetrain are pretty much indestructible. Now, somewhere around here, I've also got my bits box. This is where all the leftover bits of kits end up. Never throw anything away. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a good route through here, and I'm going to find some bits, and I am going to have a go at making my own steampunk inspired locomotive to complement this range. It's actually got me really excited. I would never normally consider doing this, but I think it's the beauty of this range that it has already, within the hour, inspired me to have a go. So we're going to speed it up, and let's see what I create. And here is the finished model. So I'm quite pleased with the end result. You've seen the speeded up build, and what I've tried to do is really disguise the shape of the Class 6 shunter and just build up interesting parts. And really, I think that's a lot of what the Steampunk is about. You don't have to have a purpose for the bits and pieces that are stuck on. They just have to look different, weird, and you know, it's about invoking the imagination. And when I spoke with Hornby about these models, what they're really wanting to do is to fire up people's imagination. It's not like this has impinged on the development of other models. In the 2020 centenary year, well, we've been spoilt rotten for conventional models. So I think that this happening in parallel is very much tapping into an alternative part of the market. Now, if you like counting rivets on a GWR 14XX somewhere near Ashburton in 1937, then really it has to be said these are not for you. But if you really liked some of the interesting things that came out of things like Great Model Railway Challenge, then yes, these very much are for you. It's about inspiring the inspiration and the creativity and the imagination of the younger generation, but also older modelers too. I think as well that wargamers, people who are perhaps into the Games Workshop Warhammer 40k scene, might also find these an interesting little sideline to add to the aesthetics of their tabletop and their gaming as well. And, you know, I think that there is a huge market out there for these, and as you can see with this model, I've been able to put together relatively quickly for pretty much no cost. I mean, this locomotive was scrap, you saw it at the start, and all of these bits have been in my bits box for probably 30 years for some of these. In fact, I do recognise the turrets off HMS King George V. That's a model I built when I was about 10 years old, and it ended up in a box of broken kits when I moved out from my parents' house, and it has only now found a home. The dry brushing that you see on here, incidentally, is Humbrol number 53, which is metallic gunmetal. And the dry brushing really does bring out a lot of this detail. You just have to get the brush almost clean. You put a tiny bit of paint on, and then you rub it off and rub it off, and then you're just getting that suggestion of the colour over any of the slight raised bits. You can see it does a fabulous job of bringing out the detail. I also painted over the buffer beams with just pure number 53. Probably needs another coat, but I just wanted to mute down that red. I also painted the side rods over in that as well, but there's an element of oil contamination, so it is coming off. But actually, no, I think I've done pretty well, and I'd like to think that this is in keeping with the spirit of the Hornby Bassett Lowke Steampunk range, firing up your imagination. I'm going to bring in that Hornby model, and you can see that these two do kind of complement each other quite nicely. So I'm really pleased with the end result, and I'd be really interested to actually see in the comments, let me know about whether you've been all fired up to build some steampunk inspired locomotives and rolling stock, maybe out of some of the bits and pieces that you didn't really know what to do with, that you've moved on from, like this locomotive for me. But overall, I'm giving the Hornby Bassett Lowke Steampunk range a colossal thumbs up. It's a totally different niche in the market, and it did enough for me to fire up my imagination that I just delved straight in. Within an hour of these coming in the post, I was already building my own models, and that is exactly what Hornby are hoping to achieve with these. So to the next generation of scratch builders, this is a perfect place to start. Well, I hope that that video was really fun for you too. It was certainly fun for me to make, and I'm really excited to see how this range develops. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to is the range of steampunk figures, and I think that this range is going to appeal to a broad cross-section of modelers, far and beyond your conventional railway modelers. Now, I know a lot of people who do things like LARP, which is live action role play, and I think that that they are also going to be attracted to this range as something a little bit fun and a little bit different. And if it brings new modelers into the market, and if it fires up the imagination of younger modelers, then that can only be a good thing. Don't forget as well to share this video on social media and let other people know about it. And if you haven't already done so, do consider subscribing to the channel and you'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself, happy modelling, and I'll see you again. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Locke, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian Smith, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Trish Bits, Sparky 107107, George Botterini, Andy Finch, Chris Moss, Robert Sears, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grant Line Products, and Judge Mortis. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.